together for a reason. Can we have one of the other mics as well? This is not working.
Yeah.
So, whilst the mic is coming, just to do a proper introduction, I've had the privilege to have worked with Arieb on a number of occasions on joint projects. Arieb is now based in Islamabad. Music has taken him to different parts of the world, taken him to Croatia, and then it's taken him back to Pakistan. And like the person in there said about the West didn't make Arieb become a disco dancer or a pop artist. In fact, it did the opposite. It made him go back to Pakistan and to treasure those amazing and cultural traditions. Arieb is a musician, he's an artist. He went to Croatia to study philosophy. He's got, just like the musician, he's full of philosophical gems, and he's a festival organizer and a cultural activist. And as I said, he's a dear friend, and I'm really honoured to be here with you today.
Thank you so much, Mukhtar, and good evening, everyone. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here. And even though I've obviously seen the movie hundreds of times, but every time I become teary-eyed when I watch it. Also because, of course, I know all the people intimately. 4 people who are in the film are no longer with us, have passed on. The one who we ended with, Sachu Khan, who's from Balochistan, who's playing the saros, unfortunately, he's passed on. And Krishan Lal Bheel, the bhajan singer with the turban, colourful turban, he's also not with us. He passed away about three years ago. Last year, Sachu Khan passed away. And then 2 of the craftsmen, the lovely gentleman from Lahore, Ziauddin Saab, is no longer here. His son now runs his shop, continues the tradition. And the old craftsman who makes the algoza is also no more. So yeah, it's...
Well, that's very, very sad to hear. But I think what you've done in capturing for posterity's sake through the documentary is that important heritage and their dedication, their service to our culture. So they may no longer be with us, but at least the music that they left behind and their philosophy remains through the great documentary that you've created. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a little...
Okay, so I come from a family of arts and culture. My late father, Arieb Azhar, was the leading founder of Pakistan Television. In 1964, he got the project to set up the pilot station of PTV. And my mother's been a lifelong human rights and women's rights activist, and also a theatre artist. She's 90 now, she's still alive, bless her. And so I grew up in that environment. My father was sacked during the Zia era, which is mentioned in the film a few times, when General Zia-ul-Haq took over and assassinated, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, Benazir Bhutto's father. And then we had martial law for the next 11 years. And that's when my father was sacked, and then we shifted to Karachi, where he then set up a theatre group called Dastak, which means knock knock. And he, together with Mansoor Saeed, who was the father of this very famous actress, Sania Saeed. So her father and my father set up that theatre group. So Sania and I grew up in that environment in Karachi, really. And there was always art and culture happening inside the house. And a lot of the folk musicians of that era and the classical musicians were friends with my parents, so they used to come around to the house. And there was also a lot of political activism going on in our house. So that's what really shaped me. And then as growing up as a young hardcore communist, I first, when I was 17, I went off to the Soviet Union to study to the promised land. And there I became disillusioned, and I saw that this is not what we have been talking about. This is, it's something else. It's there's still exploitation happening over here under a different guise. So after 4 months, I returned to Pakistan, and then I went off later when I was 19 to study to Yugoslavia. I made some friends from there, some filmmaker friends, who said that Yugoslavia is the ideal compromise between socialism and capitalism, Eastern Europe, Western Europe. It's a non-aligned country and it's a peaceful country, and I went there in 1990. So in 91, all hell broke loose, and of course the war of the dissolution of Yugoslavia started. I was a witness to that throughout, and I spent 13 years altogether in Croatia. And got Croatian nationality. I studied, as you mentioned, philosophy and Indology. So India studies, which is of course, the history of this whole region, which includes Pakistan as well. So I feel very privileged to have, as a Pakistani, gotten the opportunity to study Indology. And I'd already started playing the guitar and singing revolutionary songs, and then I got into our folk music and more the music that I'd grown up listening to, but had never really thought about the poetry. Then I started about, actually just reading up the poetry, the Sufi poetry by our great Sufi poet saints, and discovered that this is actually a universal philosophy which I can totally identify with. So that's what I then got into, and I shifted back to Pakistan about 23, 24 years ago. And then spent a lot of time with a lot of different types of musicians, folk musicians, classical musicians, many of whom I consider my teachers. And then also very soon realized that there's not that many platforms for musicians. And my upbringing, my experience, life experience had sort of trained me to be able to do some work on that front. So then we set up a few festivals and made this documentary film, and right now I'm working on a book on the history of music of Pakistan, and we've just established the first folk orchestra of Pakistan called Pakistan Folkestra. We just had our inaugural performance just a few days ago in the Pakistan National Council of Arts in Islamabad, and a lot of these instruments are represented there. So that something is moving.
Studio, and there's a whole kind of Sufism seems to be globally a face of Islam that people embrace in the West particularly. So what do you think about those platforms and authenticity around music and evolving with younger musicians?
So for those who don't know, Coke Studio was Pakistan's biggest music project, which started out in, when was it, 2003 or 4? I was part of the second season as one of the many featured musicians. I was one of them. It was founded by Rohel Hayat, who originally came from a pop music background, but then managed to convince Coca-Cola to put in money to promote folk music and to package it in a totally new manner. So like Coke Studio had a house band which consisted of instruments like the keyboard and the bass guitar and the lead guitar, and then many of our folk instruments as well. It had a massive house band, and of course it produced everything in a way that was appealing to younger urban audiences, and it was a massive success. I was part of 3 seasons of Coke Studio, so of course it was a groundbreaking project, and it changed the trajectories of many musicians that I know. I know how much it helped me in my music career. Suddenly people seem to know who I am after being featured on Coke Studio. And so in that respect, it was a great project. I mean, it's still going on, but now it's changed its direction. Before it was sort of packaging folk music in a contemporary manner. now it's become very video based, and now it's targeting the a different type of new audience who's into hip hop music and electronic music, and it's not based on folk anymore. But nonetheless, Coke Studio was a great platform for folk music. The underside was that because it was the only project out there which was really putting in money into music, into the music industry, it sort of cannibalized everything else. There were a lot of smaller projects that were happening which then died out when Coke Studio started up, because everyone started copying Coke Studio, and all the musicians felt that they needed to sound like that in order to get picked up by Coke Studios. So they needed to produce a certain type of sound, and a lot of musicians started making very standard sounding tunes after Coke Studio wanting to become part of that project. So that's the underside, but that's not Coke Studio's fault. It's just that we need so many more projects like Coke Studio. And the other question of yours was Coke Studio and what else did you mention? Sufism. So yes, Sufism is definitely, as Nigat Chaudhary said, it's the outlet. Well, because first of all, Sufism is of course a universal philosophy, but depending on where it's expressed, it's very localized as well. So, the Sufism that you find in Pakistan and in India is very different. Of course, the thought is the same, the root is the same, but the way it's expressed musically and poetically is it's very different from the Sufism that you find in Iran or the Sufism that you find in Turkey. In Pakistan and in India, all our great Sufi poets totally took on the vocabulary of non-Muslim traditions as well. So our poets like Bulle Shah and Baba Farid and Khaja Farid and so many others. Of course, Guru Nanak being the prime example of that. They tried to synthesize the streams and to express spirituality using metaphors from different religious traditions. So that's very special about our Sufism, and the music that's around that is very special. And earlier you'd asked, what difference does it make if an instrument dies out? So I mean, what difference if you can imagine if you take, I don't know, the banjo out of bluegrass music, what it would not be the same. Or if you take the guitar out of the blues, it's so it changes everything, because through that sound and through that instrument, a whole philosophy is being expressed. There are so many, for example, the Jogis over there. They have that whole snake charming tradition, and all the poetry that goes with it, and all their customs that go with it. Or Krishan Lal Bheel on that when that Nareli instrument, which is also featured in the movie, they have a whole tradition of storytelling, which they do on that instrument, And once that instrument is gone, then those stories will also die out.